let's begin your adventures in dreamland. Soft, surreal, and slightly cheeky sleep stories with awe and wonder. I'm Serene, your guide tonight. In a world of noise and endless options, you chose stillness with me. That means a lot. Dreamland floats across the world each night. Tell our community where we landed, and if you're vibing with Dreamland, a like and a subscribe tells the algorithm, hey, share the awe with others. And we know the world could use more wonder, more metaphysical, more of the unseen than the seen. We've forgotten we're spirit first, matter second. And if brushing your teeth didn't happen tonight, don't worry, you can still drift off with a clean conscience. Now, we return to what we are. Sleep isn't an escape. It's a temporary return, one we can't always access or remember. In the sleep state, the senses soften, the ego fades, and what remains is more of who you truly are. We forget our names, bodies, nationalities, possessions, and frailties. We unconsciously enjoy the great freedom that is native to the soul. Pure awareness, curiosity, and at the deepest fundamental level, in both physics and spirit, we are made of light, untouched by time, existing outside of it, free, a wave in the ocean of being. So let go. You are returning to your purest form, freedom. Your story begins. Recoleta Cemetery, Buenos Aires, is episode 32 and is part of our Dream Grounding playlist, where we appreciate overlooked beautiful realities in life, and it's the second story in our Dead History miniseries. The gates of Recoleta Cemetery ease open, their iron scrollwork shining silver under the Buenos Aires moon. Marble corridors stretch ahead, lined with angels, urns, and the kind of stone lions that look like they'd eat you for breakfast, if only they weren't so, well, dead. The air smells faintly of jasmine from the city streets beyond, drifting in to soften the solemn grandeur. And, of course, you ask yourself the obvious question, wait, how did I end up in a cemetery at bedtime? Either you've fallen asleep during a history class, or you've signed up for the strangest Airbnb experience ever. Either way, here you are. From the shadows of a towering mausoleum, a figure steps forward with the calm assurance of someone who knows these marble streets like home. Meet Mateo, your guide tonight. He's not stiff or somber. Instead, he greets you with a half smile and a voice that rolls with Argentine warmth. Welcome, he says, gesturing at the glowing avenues of stone. Recoleta is not just a cemetery. It is Buenos Aires itself, frozen in marble, politics, and memory. You'll find presidents here, poets, generals, even beloved pets, but also scandals, ghost stories, and a few surprises we'll stumble on together. His tone is light, never heavy, as if he's leading you on a night stroll rather than through one of the world's most famous necropolises. Don't worry, he adds with a wink. You'll be asleep long before we reach the end. Mateo leads you deeper into the marble city. Recoleta, he says, is not about quiet mourning. It is about grandeur. He sweeps his arm at the rows of towering mausoleums, polished marble, bronze doors, angels with wings so heavy they look ready to collapse. Every stone here was built to say something. Power, politics, national pride, presidents, generals, revolutionaries. This place is a map of Argentina's soul. And tonight, I will show you stories of love, scandal, and even ghosts. He pauses, a half smile tugging. But I'll warn you, the grave everyone comes for, the big one, that will be our second stop. Eva Perón. If you can stay awake that long, the path narrows, and Mateo stops before a white marble tomb unlike the rest. A young woman carved in stone leans against the door, her hand poised as if reaching for a handle she cannot quite turn. Her face is delicate, eternally 20. This is Rufina Cambaceres, Mateo explained softly. She was the daughter of a wealthy family, a socialite of Buenos Aires. In 1902, on the night of her 19th birthday, she collapsed suddenly. Doctors declared her dead. But then comes the rumor that never died, that Rufina had only suffered a cataleptic seizure, that she awoke inside her coffin, alive. When cemetery workers opened her tomb days later, they found the casket broken from the inside. Her body was scratched, her fingers torn, as if she had tried to claw her way out. Mateo lets the story linger in the night air. Truth or legend? Historians debate it. Some say thieves pried open her coffin, not Rufina herself. But the myth endures because it fits our fears so perfectly. He taps the marble door gently. Her statue shows her frozen at that threshold, a girl forever trying to leave. And that is why people still leave flowers here. Not just for her beauty or tragedy, but because deep down, we all dread the same nightmare. Then, Mateo softens, though that is just a fear of the ego. Spirit is not trappable. In God's grace, we all go home, home where no stone or coffin could ever hold us. He smiles faintly, letting the air lighten. And now, we turn to the most famous grave of them all. Mateo leads you down a shaded lane, past angels, urns, and marble columns, until the path narrows into a corridor of towering mausoleums. Here, the stone is darker, the walls closer, like a city street, where neighbors lean in to listen. Normally, there is a line of visitors, or for you, Brits, a quay that wraps through the long alleyways that the continuous mausoleums create. However, since we are on a special guest tour, we get to visit this grave without the wait. Mateo stops before a black granite mausoleum, modest in size compared to others, but gleaming like polished obsidian. Its bronze doors are decorated with sculpted roses and plaques, and there, in silver letters, the name Familia Duarte. This, Mateo says reverently, is where Eva Perón, Evita, rests, not in her own tomb, but in her family's vault, which is fitting, perhaps. She was always of the people. He explains how unusual the scene is. She is Argentina's most famous figure, yet her grave is tucked away in a narrow lane, easily missed if you do not know where to look. No soaring angels, no giant statues. Instead, flowers are piled daily at the door, notes, rosaries, a constant stream of offerings. Then, her story unfolds. Born poor, rising as an actress, then as the wife of President Juan Perón. Loved by millions of working-class Argentines who called themselves descamisados, the shirtless ones. She fought for women's suffrage, for labor rights, for hospitals and schools. She became a saint to some, a threat to others. Died at just 33, her body embalmed, paraded, hidden, stolen, even lost for years before finally being laid to rest here in 1976. Her grave, Mateo adds, is the most visited in Recoleta. People come to whisper thanks, or to weep, or to argue about her still. Some say she divides Argentina. Others say she unites it, but no one ignores her. He leans against the cool granite wall, and it is striking, no, that the grandest cemetery in the country holds its most famous woman in a vault so simple. No giant bust, no column to the sky, only her name, tucked here among family. And yet, she has outshone them all. Mateo lowers his voice. Evita once said, "I will return, and I will be millions." Standing here, you feel she kept her word. In the back of your mind, you can hear her sing the famous song, "Don't Cry for Me, Argentina." You smile softly. The night air is heavy with gardenia and stone. You linger a moment longer, watching the flowers rest against the door, as if the nation itself is still keeping vigil. As you turn a corner, the mood softens. Moonlight pools over marble steps, and there, stretched lazily like they own the place, are cats. Dozens of them, some curled on warm stone ledges, others weaving between iron railings, their tails flicking like little metronomes in the night. Mateo crouches, his voice dropping as though he's sharing a secret. These are the true guardians of Recoleta. No marble angel compares. One tabby blinks slowly at you, as if confirming the remark, before returning to the important business of napping. Locals feed them daily, leaving bowls tucked behind tombs. Volunteers even manage their health. In a city famous for tango and passion, Mateo chuckles, these cats have chosen the quietest dance of all, a slow waltz with eternity. You notice how their presence shifts the cemetery, no longer only marble and memory, but life. Whiskers twitch in the night breeze, paws patter softly across stone. Somehow, the cats remind you that every place of death is also a place where life insists on staying. Mateo rises and leads you toward a taller, stranger monument, a granite obelisk crowned with a bronze condor, wings spread wide, clutching a palm tree. At its base, a name gleams, Domingo Faustino Sarmiento. Here lies Argentina's 7th president, Mateo explains. But more than that, the father of our public education. His words carry pride. He believed a nation could not grow without schools. He fought for libraries, teachers, opportunities for every child. The condor above seems ready to lift the monument skyward. Sarmiento traveled the world, Mateo adds, pointing to the bronze palm. He studied in Europe, the U.S., even met Horace Mann, the North American educator. He carried back ideas and planted them here, like this palm, rooted but reaching high. You imagine classrooms filling with children, chalk dust floating in the air, futures written in careful letters across slates. It feels tender, this notion that education itself has a tomb, and yet one alive with ideals. Mateo rests his hand on the stone. Sarmiento said, "All problems are problems of education." Standing here, you realize he might still be right. A breeze ruffles the marble leaves of nearby angels, as though they nod in agreement. Mateo's eyes glint as he slows his steps, lowering his voice as if about to share a campfire secret. Now, some stories here are heavier on legend than fact, but they persist because people love them. And this one, well, it went off with a bang. He pauses in front of a weathered tomb, its stone chipped, its ironwork slightly askew. In the late 19th century, Buenos Aires was buzzing with tales of a coffin that exploded, supposedly built too tight, sealed too carefully. Gases from within built pressure until Mateo claps his hands, the sound echoing between marble walls. You startle, then grin. He shrugs, deadpan. Victorian visitors were horrified. Argentines, of course, made jokes. We are a people who argue about soccer, politics, and the afterlife with equal passion. So when a coffin bursts, well, the city dines on that gossip for decades. Was it real? maybe. Or maybe just the perfect urban myth, born in a cemetery where imagination thrives. Mateo steps closer, his smirk softening into something almost kind. What's true is this: cemeteries are not silent. They carry our fears, our stories, our nervous laughter, and sometimes a bang. The path widens into a quiet courtyard, and there it is, marble rising like a neoclassical palace, columns stacked with authority, inscriptions etched deep into stone. Mateo gestures with a sweep. Here lies Bartolomé Mitre, president, soldier, historian, builder of national myth. Mitre's tomb is stately, almost theatrical. Angels pose in dramatic contrapposto, their robes draped like curtains at an opera. Mateo smiles wryly. Mitre believed Argentina needed more than politics. It needed stories. He wrote history not just as record, but as performance inside the cool air of the mausoleum. You can almost hear the scratch of his pen. Mitre chronicled wars, leaders, founding struggles, shaping memory into narrative. Of course, Mateo says, raising an eyebrow. Critics argue he wrote history like a politician. But isn't that what marble does too? These stones don't just preserve, they persuade. You tilt your head back, tracing the carved lines of angel wings against moonlight. The grandeur feels almost defiant, as if Mitre wanted to make sure his voice never stopped echoing. Mateo nods at the columns. Some people rule nations. Others rule the way nations remember. Mitre did both. And here, his monument is as much about ego as legacy. Marble politics, frozen for eternity. You wander deeper, and suddenly it feels less like a cemetery and more like a strange, moonlit museum. Towers pierce the sky, spires twist with Gothic confidence, and glass coffins shimmer faintly behind wrought iron gates. Mateo gestures upward, his voice part awe, part amusement. Welcome to the world's most glamorous neighborhood, except everyone here refuses to answer the door. He points to a mausoleum shaped like a miniature palace. Some families spent fortunes on architects, importing marble from Italy, stained glass from France. They wanted eternity, but also curb appeal. You catch sight of an angel carved in such detail that her marble eyelids seem to flicker. Another tomb is crowned by a dome like a Renaissance chapel. And through the bars of a small vault, green glass glows softly around a coffin, eerie and beautiful, like a lantern left on overnight. Mateo chuckles. Recoleta is an art gallery disguised as a graveyard. Neoclassical, Baroque, Art Nouveau, all competing, even in death. The result? A city of styles, a neighborhood of the departed, but also a catalog of beauty. The corridors around you shift into a dreamy labyrinth. Marble columns blur into moonlight. Every turn reveals another masterpiece, another attempt to capture forever in stone. The grandeur quiets as Mateo stops at a simpler, modern tomb. Its lines are clean, geometric, almost understated among its ornate neighbors. The plaque reads, Luis Federico Leloir. Here, Mateo says, rests a Nobel Prize winner. Not a politician, not a general, a scientist. His tone warms with pride. Leloir discovered how sugars fuel life, unlocking pathways that shaped modern medicine. Thanks to him, we understand glycogen and metabolism, the chemistry that lets us move, breathe, even dream. He pauses, letting the idea settle. It's strange, isn't it? In a place obsessed with marble grandeur, one of the brightest minds chose simplicity, as if to say, discovery itself is monument enough. The tomb seems to glow with quiet dignity. You imagine lab notebooks filled with equations, vials of chemicals clinking faintly, a life of careful study translated into breakthroughs that ripple through hospitals and kitchens alike. Mateo runs his hand lightly across the stone. Science, here among saints and soldiers, proof that Argentina's legacy is not only written in wars and politics, but also in molecules. And that too is eternity. Mateo turns down a narrow corridor where the air feels unexpectedly tender. A glass-paneled mausoleum gleams emerald in the moonlight, tinted like a greenhouse. Inside rests a young poet, Liliana Crociati, forever preserved in green light. Outside, her statue waits, a bronze figure of Liliana herself, dressed in her wedding gown, her hand resting gently on the head of her loyal dog. The animal gazes up with eternal devotion, ears perked as if still waiting for her voice. She died young, Mateo says softly, in an avalanche in Austria. Her parents built this tomb as a love letter, glass, light, poetry, and the companionship of her dog. His voice carries both reverence and mischief. Some say this is Recoleta's most tender corner. Personally, I think the dog wins best behaved resident. Never barks, never bites, always faithful. The effect is moving. You linger on the detail of the bride in bronze, her hand forever reaching downward, the dog's devotion lifting upward. Grief has been sculpted into love, frozen not in marble grandeur, but in a gesture so simple it makes your chest ache. From tenderness, Mateo leads you to a tomb with carvings of gauchos and verses etched in stone. The name is bold, Jose Hernandez, the poet who gave Argentina its national epic, Martín Fierro. This, Mateo explains, is not just a grave. It is the resting place of our voice. Hernandez wrote of the gaucho, the horseman of the pampas, poor, proud, exiled, resisting authority. Martín Fierro is more than literature. It is identity. You imagine campfires in the grasslands, guitars strummed beneath infinite stars, verses carried by the wind. Hernandez captured not politics, but spirit, the defiance and longing of a people who lived between civilization and wilderness. Mateo runs his hand along the stone etching of a rider on horseback. Every Argentine schoolchild reads Martín Fierro. It reminds us who we are, even when the world tries to tame us. The tomb is modest compared to others, but the poetry carved here feels eternal, as if the words themselves have been set in stone. In the hush of the cemetery, you can almost hear the rhythm of hooves and the song of the pampas. The path narrows again, and Mateo stops at a tomb draped in ivy, its marble softened by time. The plaque bears a name that makes his eyes brighten: Adolfo Bioy Caceres. Here lies one of Argentina's great dreamers, Mateo says, a novelist, a friend, and collaborator of Jorge Luis Borges. Together they spun tales where time bent, reality blurred, and imagination itself became immortal. You picture smoky Buenos Aires cafes, two writers scribbling wild ideas on napkins, laughing about paradoxes and labyrinths. Bioy Caceres' works, like the invention of Morel, read like dreams you half remember, surreal yet strangely believable. Mateo leans against the ivy-covered wall. Literature is another kind of afterlife. Words carry us beyond death, don't they? Bioy Caceres rests here, but his pages still breathe. Borges once said his friend wrote with invisible ink, words that glow brighter after you've closed the book. You stand a little longer, hearing the whisper of paper in your imagination, the hush of stories that never die. Soon, the path opens into a grand alley where mausoleums tower like rivals in a stone competition. One is crowned with a Gothic spire, the other with Corinthian columns so tall they nearly brush the stars. Mateo chuckles, spreading his arms. Welcome, he says, to Argentina's most eternal contest, whose tomb is bigger. It's hard not to laugh. The marble facades seem to glare at one another, as if still locked in family feuds that outlived their members. You see, Mateo explains, even in death, egos refuse to shrink. Families tried to outdo each other in height, in statues, in stained glass. Some even hired architects just to top their neighbor's design. One mausoleum rises like a mini cathedral, its angels flexing their marble wings with exaggerated pride. Across the lane, another vault gleams with imported Italian stone, polished like a jewel. Mateo smirks. You'd think heaven had a VIP section. The rivalry feels almost comical, yet deeply human. Our need to be remembered, even to win in marble, carries forward. You can't help but smile at the thought. The quietest street in Buenos Aires might also be its most competitive. Mateo guides you to a quiet bench tucked beneath a cypress tree, the branches whispering softly in the night breeze. From here, you can see a sweep of the cemetery. Marble avenues stretching out like a miniature city, angels perched at every corner, cats padding silently through the shadows. He lowers his voice, almost as if afraid to disturb the stillness. Cemeteries always tell the truth about a culture, he says. What people feared, what they loved, what they wanted to be remembered for. You think back on what you've seen tonight, the tragic statue of Rufina Cambaceres, frozen at a door she could never open. Evita's modest black vault, pulsing with flowers and memory. The cats weaving through eternity, more alive than the marble lions. Sarmiento's condor, wings forever spread toward the horizon. Mitre history written in stone. Liliana Crociati's dog, faithful as love itself. Mateo gestures at the spires around you. Victorian England gave the world mourning jewelry, tear jars, even photographs with the dead. Argentina chose grandeur, marble the size of palaces, columns taller than churches. To mourn here was to show your politics, your pride, your permanence. He smiles faintly. Different rituals, same longing. We all want to matter after we're gone. The bench creaks as you lean back, gazing upward. The stars peek between cypress branches, their silver light mingling with the glow of stained glass windows. For a moment, it feels as if the sky and cemetery belong to the same architecture, one of stone, one of light. Mateo continues softly. In the end, these tombs are mirrors. They show us who we were, but they also remind us that nothing we build, no matter how heavy the marble, outlasts the quiet return to the earth. Dust listens longer than angels. His words settle in you like warm tea. You realize cemeteries aren't really about death. They are about continuity, about belonging to something bigger than yourself, family, nation, faith, memory. You glance at Mateo. He gives a half smile. Strange bedtime story, no? But then again, bedtime is always a rehearsal for eternity. You close your eyes, you let go, and in the morning, you rise again. At last, Mateo rises, brushing imaginary dust from his hands. Our tour is done, he says gently. Recoleta sleeps again, and so will you. The marble corridors begin to blur, their outlines dissolving into softer shapes. Columns bend into shadows, statues melt into clouds. The iron gates that once opened with a creak now swing silently, fading into the edges of your bedroom. You hear the faint mewl of a cat echo across the stones, and then, just as quickly, it transforms into the rhythm of your own breath. Inhale, Exhale, soft, steady, like paws padding across marble. The mausoleums themselves seem to lean back, exhaling into dream. A spire becomes the corner of your nightstand. An angel's wing folds into the pillow beneath your cheek. Even the condor above Sarmiento's tomb spreads its wings, only to dissolve into the darkness of your room. Mateo's voice lingers one last time, close and warm, as though he's sitting by your bedside. Good night. May your dreams be as grand as these marble palaces, and as gentle as the cats who guard them. The stars above Buenos Aires flicker once more, then soften into the glow behind your eyelids. You sink into rest, carried by stories, folded by stone and starlight, at peace in the knowledge that memory, love, and wonder are eternal. And now you drift. Sweet dreams. Good night.